The curtains open, they close again, they open. I don't know why. Okay, they don't have curtains in theaters anymore. Nostalgia, people. So, briefly, I'm not going to talk about Kubrick very long, so I'll just get that out of the way first. Just kind of tacking it on rather than doing a longer, comprehensive thing. I mean, he only made like 8 movies or something, but recently another content creator had mentioned that they had not seen The Shining, so I felt compelled to point out to them, and got no response, that The Shining is maybe his worst film, but, you know, obviously one of the most popular, you know, but like I said, he only made about 8 of them, so all the popular ones are kind of fighting for each other for the top spot still, I guess, with, you know, film geeks and movie buffs and that sort of thing. Although I would argue that one of the least popular or least well-known, Barry Lyndon, is actually, you know, fairly underrated by comparison. And Full Metal Jacket, of course, was kind of uneven. Everybody agrees that the beginning is totally important and the second half is a little bit kind of jarring the way they're kind of juxtaposed or whatever. And of course, Lolita, nobody really talks about anymore, but that they had, you know, he had made into more of a weird comedy versus if you compare it to the 1997 adaptation with Dominique Swain and all that. But of course, Peter Sellers was the big hit guy at the time, you know, and he had his little subtle humor, and he showed up in obviously Doctor Strangelove and blah blah blah. Of course, I could never stand his Pink Panther movies. I don't know. I liked Mel Brooks kind of farce comedies, but I didn't really care for those. I don't know. Wrong generation, I guess. Didn't work for me. So anyway, this was a chunk from a Facebook memory. So that's the end of my Stanley Kubrick thing for now. Anyway, maybe, like I said, if I put more thought into it later, you know, maybe I'll do a longer video about him. But I had a Facebook chunk where there was a meme, like 12 years ago about, I think it was right around the time that 50 Shades of Grey came out, you know, and so they were saying, you know, that kind of thing, but also Hallmark movies and rom-coms. That the guy was saying, you know, if you substituted an ugly guy for a hunk in most rom-coms, it becomes a horror movie, right? And, you know, in all the rom-coms, the men act basically like, you know, predators more than heroes or whatever. So I would argue, you know, on the 50 Shades of Grey side, or instead of just good looks, if he has money, that can also be a factor, right? I think that came slightly later, and nobody's really talking about that movie anymore either. Although they did, 2 sequels or something? I don't know. I never saw the third one, I don't think. But so anyway, so naturally I had to go off on When Harry Met Sally instead of these other movies, because that's my touchstone, the one that I always come back to as kind of the ultimate rom-com, the one that kind of spawned all the newer ones, even though it wasn't, you know, a new genre by any stretch of the imagination. And maybe he had mentioned it in his thing, whoever he was, I don't remember, comedy bit. But anyway, so in Harry, and I did a long dive into Harry and Sally some months ago. Let me go to my playlists instead of, I'm always in the wrong menu on the thing for what I want to talk about immediately. But just give me a second. So episode 28, 9 months ago. So, okay. So, but it's not too far to scroll because that menu is not very long. That's like movie number 4 or 5. Well, the one got deleted. I don't know why. YouTube vanished my movie about Miracle on Ice. Movie or video live stream. So yeah, there's literally only 3 that you're going to be able to see. So you're not gonna. Chances are you won't scroll by the Harry and Sally one if you're really looking for it. Anyway, so in Harry and Sally, Harry is actually pretty reserved and puts up with a ton of her crap. This is my original comments again, and insults until she finally sleeps with him and then tries to turn the whole thing around on him. You know, you used me. Oh, okay, sure. I'm surprised she stops short of accusing him of date assault, right? Which, you know, if you watch enough reality TV, that's what they go to first these days, apparently. Something like that. Whereas in another movie that should make it into the marquee, but I talked about Nicholas Sparks in one of the videos, and I don't remember which one. But in Message in a Bottle and Sleepless in Seattle, because they're kind of the same film as I've discussed, the female is actually the predator, and she's about one shade or degree away from the Fatal Attraction plot, right? And as I've said before, of course, I prefer Message in a Bottle because it has a better boat scene and Paul Newman and all that. I might have talked about some of this in that before. I don't remember. So here it is again, maybe. It also depends on if the chick in question is the ugh word. Like in Big Fat Greek Wedding. I don't know if you're allowed to say big and fat, but that's the actual title of a film. On purpose. That gal where for some reason the hunky Northern Exposure guy who was also in Sleeps Around in the City, he wastes an entire hour trying to convince this furball that she's beautiful and she doesn't want to believe him. You know, like that's the opposite of Harry and Sally, right? Where it's Beauty and the Beast. At least the family is funny and full of humorous stereotypes, right? The Graduate wasn't supposed to be a comedy, was it? Let's skip that one for now. Actually, Sally kind of does accuse Harry of assault. She just knows that since she wasn't intoxicated, she doesn't have much of a case and can't press charges. So then she marries him instead. Me being funny. Okay. Probably the best movie about female psychology ever. Yeah, I definitely was onto something here when I was talking about that. Skips chunks of old comments. Okay, You've Got Mail. I don't remember that one scene by scene, but the premise is that he hides his identity from her because she likes writing to him, but hates him in person because he's trying to put her out of business, and she takes that personally because she is a female or something. Apparently, Meg Ryan is really weird because every character she plays has these hang-ups or something. I'm extrapolating, of course, to make yet another joke that doesn't land when there's no audience. Rom-coms continue. I forgot 16 Candles. Yes, she hates the annoying geek, but loves Jake Ryan because he has a dreamy, empty-headed look in his eyes in math class and then trades the geek as a pimp for his girlfriend because her bitchy ex, so he can return Molly's undergarments to her after a party. But he has a cool car and rich parents. Of course, in the movie, we're going back to Harry and Sally now. So yeah, again, if you're good looking and rich, then it's okay that you pawn off your own chick on the dude that the other chick wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole or whatever. Okay, in Harry and Sally, he is supposed to be a total player and sleeps with lots of women, even though he still likes Sally because she's a cute little blonde. In real life, no guy who looks like Billy Crystal or acts like Harry is really getting that much action. Whereas almost any unattractive chick can find some dude willing to take her to the room. Yeah, exactly. Or there wouldn't be so many unattractive kids running around outside of Hollywood movies. Which is worse, rom-coms or fairy tales? One springs from the other, but has a better soundtrack and better sight gags. Yeah. Then in a recent video, Alex Grace, they were talking about solipsism, meaning self-centered feminism premised on selective empathy and selective outrage. And so this had led someone to actually mention The Devil Wears Prada, and he was talking about a couple movies in there And so Neigh says, the Devil Wears Prada points out the toxicity of feminists when in charge. She even hated her female workers. Turn over society to the harpies. God save us. But of course, as I talked about back in the first Devil Wears Prada screenwriting seminar, which is episode wait, what did it vanish? Oh, maybe it's at the bottom. Right. No, that would be the first. Okay, yeah, it never got moved to the top of the playlist. Okay, that's just my fault. In the first one, episode 30, as opposed to the second one, episode 31, I talked a lot more about the dynamic in the office and all that. Episode 31 was more about the inner play between Andi and her coworker, Emily. So then PNW comes in and says, she gave up the best grilled cheese sandwiches in the world for some stupid clothes and a boss job. Now, see, now he's talking about Andi, not Meryl Streep, the devil. But in the end, she wanted the sandwiches. Well, she still doesn't end up with the guy because he moves to Boston. I can't remember what he did when she tried to come back. I hope he rejected her. Well, he left the door open, I guess, for her to move to Boston. Not exactly sure how to. Again, that was in the second one, I think. I talked about that, and yeah, the resolution seemed kind of unnecessary. Why even bring him back at all if you're not going to do anything there? But Prada sequel, more speculation before I get into the next longer chunk. That was the stuff that I typed in the comments of the first one. But again, the boss, Meryl Streep, changed the character from the book, according to that other guy's long video that I watched in the interim, and realized that I hadn't, he had touched on different points than my points, so I hadn't ripped him off, but he had actually missed one significant point where, and he contradicted himself like twice, where I pointed out that it was a false moral dilemma that Andi was actually experiencing. They were just gaslighting her into feeling bad, or Meryl Streep's character, Miranda, blah, blah, blah. So I imagine the sequel is just 2 hours of product placement. Let's see. So sick of typing all them extra syllables. No part where. Oh, okay. I'm sure there's no, like in the first one, there was no part where she felt weird and awkward and uncomfortable in her new clothes, having this transition period. She just goes down and sees Nigel and he gives her new clothes and she's all, yeah, I'm a fashion girl now. And the boyfriend accuses her of being a total sellout, which, you know, I guess technically she kind of is. Then deal with she made a deal with the devil, haha, literally and figuratively, but he contradicts himself at least twice. Oh, in his video. Yeah. Reaches the wrong conclusion, like I said. Okay. About when exactly Andi has sold out. Yeah, and all that. Okay. So I wrote it in my notes. I just didn't know what I was talking about when I was writing. Okay. I was talking about also, there was a kind of a Wizard of Oz analogy that mostly falls flat. The characters and storyline, technically there's a Scarecrow, technically there's a Cowardly Lion, which I guess is Stanley Tucci, but the character without the heart, is Emily Blunt, but Emily Blunt's not a scaredy cat like the Scarecrow. She's more fearful than a real lion, and kind of her manner, in the thing. So I guess she's supposed to be a Tin Man. Or I'm sorry, Scarecrow's I only had a brain. Sorry, which is, I said it backwards. The Tin Man has a brain, but he doesn't have a heart. But at the end, then she has a heart. So she's Emily Blunt is the Tin Man, but the Tin Man isn't and mean to Dorothy. So again, the Scarecrow, Yeah, not sure exactly. Toto, I guess, would be the phone barking at her all the time, but Toto is a beloved, you know, companion, not an annoyance contrivance that she has to carry around to bring Miranda into the scene, as opposed to when the Wicked Witch shows up in the scene, it's different. She has her own little magic mirror in the water or whatever. Let's see. Just it's in the end, it's just a gadget to be tossed, and it has no mind of its own that that actually affects the plot. Again, it brings Miranda, who is the plot, or whatever. Whole second half, entertaining slop where setups are abandoned for alternate payoffs. Yeah, so I kind of covered that. In the second one, maybe more. So in The Wizard of Oz, here's where I had written it out better. More thoughts that should have been in the video, but can clarify here and won't require a third installment, even though I'm doing a third installment now. Some or much lingering popularity based more upon nostalgia than critical thinking is kind of what led to this sequel, I guess. People can like stuff without understanding it, sure, but taxi crash scene may seem like big subplot crux, but not really upon closer inspection. Scenes actually out of proper sequence, really, for how it should build up, and if that was going to be, again, the actual moral dilemma, because Andi has already been criticized by Miranda and crosses the Rubicon to fit in and da-da-da, which, again, is different than how it plays out in the book that I haven't read. Let me put it this way. This whole second half is just kind of one big clunky non sequitur where the setups and payoffs do not really match expectations. And the interpersonal conflicts, all kind of misdirect onto Miranda more than Andi, whom is supposed to be the main character. And how is Andi get a recommendation for Miranda for any job much other than personal assistant, again, since that's all she's been groomed to excel at, which I did talk about a little bit previously. Okay. But she can also look glamorous in nice outfits now, but that which she learned already after the first couple months, after just being ridiculed a bit in some meeting. So some guy gives her a bunch of new clothes because he's allowed to do pretty much whatever he wants because he's a more glorified personal assistant or something. Yay. Emily Loki sings her praises like the end of boot camp movie because now they are really friends, sort of, after all, because Andi bribes her with a bunch more better clothes than the free ones she got from Stanley Tucci the first time around because they came from Paris, where they have better clothes than what's in the basement of the fashion magazine where places send the clothes that they showed presumably last year in Paris. Okay, whatever. A sweet enough moment that actually works, but how this really is any less superficial than the similar exchange with her college friend over the Coach purse that she dumps and gets jettisoned from the story with no actual ending resolution. Because the boyfriend comes back, but the other two don't. Her school friends are just convenient mirrors of her new work cohorts, except that the boyfriend is mainly the opposite of Miranda. Again, in the Cowardly Lion and Wicked Witch scheme of things, everybody has their little doppelganger, but he's not really Glinda the Good Witch or even the dead Wicked Witch of the East. He's whatever. But, everything Miranda is trying to train her is what he's telling her he doesn't like, He hates fashion and all that, but this does not make her second guess her job or her relationship. She wants both, which is about the last really tidy break with the first half version and her trajectory character arc, which there isn't really that much of a character arc in a sense. It's kind of, it seems kind of jarring because all of a sudden she looks good in the midpoint. And then later again, Miranda uses it against her after, but that's all she does is use everything against you. So you can't win for losing with her. So blah, blah, blah. Before everything gets replaced by similar enough resolutions instead of direct ones. Yeah, because they kind of take what seems to be the plot, which is, kind of this relationship story, and then all of a sudden it's about Stanley Tucci and the evil woman who doesn't know how to do fashion magazines, maybe taking over the fashion magazine from the other evil woman, blah, blah, blah. Except Andi is supposed to be the bizarro Miranda too, not just Dorothy, although I don't remember in The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy turning into a wicked witch was never part of the actual plot, right? One will likely argue that boyfriend and hunky guy are the logical pairing to be doppelgangers because, again, the shady guy who's trying to help supplant Miranda is sort of a love interest, but it's more of a hookup one night thing, really. And they kind of serve two completely plot functions, despite some, dialogue bits about her being a competent woman and all that. There's no real intrigue with her boyfriend that he, knows about this other guy or, this and that. It's just he hates that she took this job, period. That's, And he has some fashion love affair with a guy who's a schemer, but there's no friction there betwixt him and her ex-boyfriend, like I said, who mostly is her ex already earlier because of her new clothes. I forget if they exactly break up when in the sequence, which doesn't really matter. There's pretty much no reason to bring the boyfriend guy back at the end at all, which we've already said twice, but again, predicated by that guy's thing. I had already mentioned it months ago, but so sorry, a little bit redundant here. Which I also mentioned in the previous video installment 2, because let's just keep coming back to that because, again, it's not really a rom-com at all. This closing scene meant to imply that she will be capable, perhaps in the future, at maintaining a real romantic relationship along with a career, unlike Miranda, because Miranda's failed at her 3 husbands or whatever, whilst the other friends and her dad are jettisoned from the story completely, like so many other characters along the way. Mostly fine in execution, I guess, but yeah, it's kind of like in a typical, again, I hate David Mamet movies because they're too symmetrical. They're so 1-1-1, but the audience does kind of expect a payoff to a setup. Don't make us invest time and thought into these characters if halfway through they vanish, like, and now they're doppelgangers, or it's like, there should have been like a birthday party scene or something where they were all there instead of just this awkward lunch with the boyfriend where he tells her, hey, I'm leaving, and see you in 200 miles away if you can make the train ride. Like they're all supposed to kiss and make up at the end, and she realizes who her real friends always were all along, right? Nope, now she just has a new job, and that's all fine and good because she's a career gal. She doesn't need boyfriends and friends and fancy clothes, even though she still has fancy clothes. Let's see. So a heap of wishful thinking thrown on top of a somewhat random method for the structure. Lastly, plenty missed opportunity for some character to point out that Miranda's last name is Priestley, a joke that must have been in the first draft somewhere. Okay, so that was that. And that took longer than it probably should have to badly reread my old notes about movies, but there we finally got it off our chest, and for what it's worth. And like I said, this wasn't so much a screenwriting seminar as a sort of rant, which we do from time to time. And that's why it's called movie talk instead of screenwriting seminar. So if you don't like it, take it up with HR or management or somebody who... As always, you can leave any questions in the comments, and if they're legitimate questions and not just weird nonsense that crossed your mind and thought I would understand because somehow I became a mind reader, go ahead and leave that in the comments. And of course, if you're really, really interested, you can check it out. Activated the Buy Me a Coffee feature. I'm always happy to get pizza donations for my hats and boots. I know only 3 people are going to watch this, so I'm just talking to talk at this point. But boycott Tinder, do it. Find a real love in a real way, not giving these scam people any of your hard-earned money, unless you're rich, like the rom-com guy, in which case you probably don't need a dating app to clean up anyway. You're doing it wrong.